had a pleasure of working with this guy when I became the Director of Community Relations for the YMCA. The Honorable Vincent Orange was a guy who would receive my calls and return them. I'm just going to put it like that, simply. And he is a champion of Washington, D.C. But I still have this document in front of me that I have to share with you. But I just want you to know he proves that you have to be nice to everyone, because I had no idea that I would be here with him today, along with Mr. Stell, his chief of staff back in the day, who used to navigate the show. All right, so the Honorable Vincent Bernard, which is my uncle's name, Mr. Orange, Sr., is an attorney and a certified public accounting, possessing degrees in taxation. I need to talk to you after the luncheon. Law, communications, and business administration. Mr. Orange served 14 years in Washington, D.C. as an elected official, including 2 terms as Ward 5, my ward, council member, and 2 terms as an at-large council member. And he served 6 years as the Washington, D.C. Democratic National Committeeman, and recently served 4 years as president and CEO of the D.C. Chamber of Commerce. Well, you get around. Mr. Orange is currently setting up youth apprenticeship programs for the government of the District of Columbia. Couldn't have met a better man when it comes down to the youth. In 2005, Mr. Orange authored legislation creating the only District of Columbia public holiday entitled the District of Columbia Emancipation Day. How about that? How about that? Give him a hand. Give him a round hand. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's posterity there, which honors the 3,100 DC emancipated slaves. Come on, screen. Emancipate. That's the downside to technology. The screen goes dark on you when you least need it to. Honors the 3,100 DC enslaved persons freed on April 16th, 1862. 9 months before the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863. There's a little retro history for you folks. The Honorable Vincent Bernard Orange Sr. has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the 2023 President Joseph R. Biden's Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, and the induction into the Washington, D.C. Hall of Fame Society, and that's back in 2018. Also, another man close to my heart, DC TV Hall of Fame. Isn't that Ward 5, Mr. Orange? DC TV, right near the Brooklyn Metro stop. Prince Hall Lodge, number 14, Lifetime Achievement Award back in 2017 by that organization. And the Sigma Delta Tau Legal Fraternity, Inc. Outstanding Service Award back in 2016 for his career accomplishments promoting excellence in the study, practice, and judicial process of the law. Mr. Orange is a lifetime member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I would have joined that at AU, but I had to work 13 jobs, man. I became a me phi me. Yeah, but I like to color the black and the yellow or the orange. Yeah, I like that. A Prince Hall affiliate Mason and a member of the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church located in Washington, D.C. Isn't that around the corner, sir? Right there on M Street. And there you have it. The Honorable Vincent, let me get it right, Bernard Orange Sr. is now before you. Let's give him a round of applause.
Well, the Donnie Shaw show has arrived. And I want to thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I'm greatly appreciative of your kind words. What a beautiful day the Lord has made for us to gather here at the University Club to have this dialogue. And I just want to begin by saying, Madam President, Lisa Cohen, and the distinguished members of the Washington, D.C. Rotary Club, friends, associates, and guests. I'm extremely humbled, honored, and delighted to be here today at the prestigious University Club in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., a few blocks from the White House, the Charles Sumner School and Museum, Black Lives Matter Plaza, and around the corner from my church, the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church. It is indeed a privilege to be amongst the Washington, D.C. Rotary Club, having been founded in 1912, where its members come together for community service with the motto, service above self. Where this Washington, D.C. Rotary Club is one of over 46,000 Rotary clubs with 1.4 million volunteers in over 200 countries around the world, committed to serving our communities and building bridges among people. I salute and commend you. You can give yourselves a round of applause. I'm pleased to have the presence of my former Chief of Staff, Estelle Mathis Lloyd, with us today. As we embark upon the subject matter of the District of Columbia Emancipation Day, a public holiday celebrated annually on April 16th, representing the signing into law by the 16th President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln, the District of Columbia compensated Emancipation Act of 1862, which freed and released 3,100 enslaved persons from bondage in the District of Columbia for $1 million paid to the enslaved owners by the United States government. My. How did this come about? In early 1862, history records that Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner, school right down the street in the museum, posed the following question to the President of the United States. Do you know who is at this moment the largest slaveholder in the United States? The answer astounded the 16th president. The answer was, it is Abraham Lincoln, for he holds all the slaves of the District of Columbia. In early 1862, during the second year of America's Great Civil War, the federal government controlled jurisdiction over Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. The symbolic center of the great American democracy, and yet, ironically, a city surrounded on all sides by southern states that embraced slavery. Frederick Douglass, the Metropolitan AME Church, the 15th Street Presbyterian Church, abolitionists, numerous petitioners, and others expressed horror at the spectacle of slave auction blocks coexisting in close proximity to the United States Capitol building and the White House. Decades of anti-slavery sentiment gained currency with moderate Americans who expressed shame that the federal government would allow institution of slavery while fighting in large measure over the very issue of mankind exchanging a portion of itself. In 1861 and 1862, Congress incurred a groundswell of a settlement with charges of hypocrisy for allowing the unsavory conditions of slavery to exist in the district and demanded emancipation. In December 1861, heeding the prevailing tide of public opinion, Massachusetts Senator Henry Wilson, a longtime advocate of manumission, introduced a bill to end all slavery in the District of Columbia. The legislation, as you might imagine, met serious opposition from Washington slave holders who moved from the district to avoid losing their slaves, and from Washington's city council, which insisted that freedom would render the district an asylum for free Negroes, a population of undesirables in every American community. Nevertheless, the bill passed approval in the Senate on April 3rd, 1862, and in the House of Representatives on April 12th. On April 16, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the legislation, and the enacted bill became law, immediately freeing some 3,100 persons held to service or labor within the District of Columbia by reason of African descent. 9 months later, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, which freed the slaves in the states that had seceded from the Union, although the word of freedom to the enslaved were not communicated to all until June 19, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, which incidentally was 2 months after President Abraham Lincoln had been shot on April 14, 1865, and died the next day on April 15, 1865. Now, let's make sure we're on the same page of history here, the same sheet of music, and the same understanding, in order that we may together move further with this history in harmony. Here's the deal. The Emancipation Proclamation, declared by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 during the American Civil War, only freed slaves held in the Confederate States. Only through the 13th Amendment did emancipation become national policy. It was passed by the Senate on April 8, 1964, and by the House on January 31st, 1865. The joint resolution of both bodies then submitted the amendment to the states for approval and signed by President Abraham Lincoln on February 1st, 1865, 2.5 months before his assassination and death on April 15, 1865. The 13th Amendment was ratified on December 6, 1865, and stated the following: neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Significantly, the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution became the first time the government of the United States of America freed Americans who had been unwillingly thrust into bondage. Because remember, in 1862, the government paid the enslaved owners $1 million. So they were still considered property at that time, but now I've purchased your property and I'm going to let your property go. Accordingly, it was this landmark event, the 13th Amendment, in the history of American civil rights and human rights that finally put into action Thomas Jefferson's idealistic words of nearly a century earlier, that all men are created equal. to recognize and preserve the importance of emancipation after the Civil War, formerly enslaved people and others commemorated the signing of the 1862 Act by parading down Pennsylvania Avenue in festive attire with music and marching bands proclaiming and celebrating freedom in the District of Columbia, Emancipation Day Parade. The parade was received by every sitting president of the United States of America from 1866 to 1901. Then it disappeared. In my opening remarks today, I indicated that I was pleased to be joined by my former Chief of Staff, Estelle Mathis Lloyd. In January of 1999, I took the oath of office as a member of the Council of the District of Columbia, representing Ward 5. During my first term, the state of Maryland requested that I introduce a resolution commemorating Juneteenth, which would be a recognition of the day that American soldiers rode into Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, announcing that the enslaved were free. Of course, I agreed to present the resolution, and Ms. Lloyd, as Chief of Staff, assigned this task to our staff attorney, Adam Levi, to conduct the research and draft the resolution. Well, the research indicated that the slaves were freed in D.C. first on April 16, 1862, 3 years before Juneteenth in 1865. Upon further review, I decided to author legislation creating an annual public legal holiday entitled the District of Columbia. Now, I made it a private legal holiday first because I know we weren't ready for a public holiday. And also, I reached out to my colleague, Carol Swartz, a Republican, so this could be a bipartisan introduction. So the two of us introduced this legislation, and we got all 11 council members to sign on to this legislation to reverse the history of before what I told you what the Washington City Council thought way back when. And we did this to recognize and preserve the cultural history and heritage of the District of Columbia. I believe that it was important to the descendants of free Black people and slaves, and to all other African American citizens in the District of Columbia, and all the supporters, that this important moment in the history of the District of Columbia in the United States be formally recognized within the District of Columbia. Henceforth, the District of Columbia will now symbolize the triumph of the human spirit over the cruelty of slavery. After a 100-year absence, I was able to resume the DC Emancipation Day Parade in the nation's capital in the year 2002. After setting things up and working on Mayor Anthony Williams and getting him to see the vision, to believe the vision, and getting other members, although I couldn't get Councilmember Swartz to go along with me for the public holiday. She had some reservations, but in any event, on January 4th, 2005, legislation I authored and introduced officially designated April 16th as a legal public holiday to be observed by the District of Columbia government, requiring the closing of the government of the District of Columbia, including the schools and the courts, for the District of Columbia Emancipation Day recognition. Now, something I was not aware of, but it just actually happened, and it's strange how little things, turned out to be a major impact. And it's impacted everybody in this room and everybody in the United States of America, and even American citizens that are outside the city. Our legislation impacts them. Because at times, the DC Emancipation Day impacts the filing of federal taxes on April 15th. This impact has occurred 4 times since April 16th became a DC public holiday. It is noteworthy and significant that the federal government has recognized DC Emancipation Day as a federal holiday for tax filing purposes. Yeah. In 2016, the Washington Post, that used to be right behind us, reported this year, 2016, the holiday which shuts down city government will be celebrated April 15th, also known as Tax Day, and because of the conjunction, the entire country gets a 3-day reprieve on filing 2015 tax returns, making the official tax filing deadline Monday, April 18th. Happy Emancipation Day, America. And if all the citizens want to give me $1, I can walk out of here with $365 million. Madam President and distinguished members of the Washington, D.C. Rotary Club, friends, associates, and guests. And I see my good traveling buddy back there, Jerry. We traveled the world together. Thanks so much for having me as your keynote speaker today. There are so many people to thank, known and unknown, who gave their lives, blood, sweat, and tears for the liberation of the enslaved. Life, liberty, and death, coupled with the pursuit for happiness, along with a legal recognition guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States that all men are created equal, has come at great cost, but as history has recorded, shall not be denied regardless of the severe cost incurred. Many of us share a firm belief that we shall overcome someday, which affords us the opportunity to march on until victory is won. In God we trust. For one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May God bless us all. Thank you all very, very much.
Hi, I just want to thank you for a truly, truly inspirational speech. I hung on every word, and your delivery was beautiful. I have not so much a question as I think an observation. I also think April 15, by coincidence, is the birthday of our president, if I'm not mistaken. So I just wanted to point that out as perhaps the planets aligning. Thank you very much for a wonderful speech.
Actually, mine's tomorrow. I'm April 11th.
How are we doing in spreading that wonderful reminder of history, the rich history of DC and the United States in our elementary schools? I remember when I went to Stanton Elementary, the closest we got to this kind of history was a trip to the Frederick Douglass House, but there's more to it than that.
I don't believe that we're doing as much as we can to really educate folks on the DC Emancipation Day and the history itself. I thought it should be at least a mandatory, course, or at least a mandatory hour or two presentation at every school, so everyone understands the history. Now, from 1866 to 1901, it actually was the school system that was really in charge of the parade, and they brought everyone out. And I think that's been one of our failings, in that we have not really gotten the school population involved in DC Emancipation Day the way that it should be. I think we missed a great opportunity when, in fact, we were honored to get all branches of the armed forces to participate in the parade. We were also able to get surrounding jurisdictions to participate in the parade. We even had Joel Osteen come in and bring greetings one morning at the Willard Hotel. We had Dick Gregory, we've had Jesse Jackson, Dorothy Height. We've had a number of people, Al Sharpton, and many come and really participate. At one point, we had even Mark Plotkin, the late Mark Plotkin. We had on Emancipation Day, we would begin the day with a prayer breakfast at the Willard Hotel. And then we would have the parade. And then after the parade, we would have a luncheon at the Hamilton restaurant. And following the restaurant, we'd have workshops inside the district building. And we even at one point had the Lincoln Theater, where we had, a capacity crowd come in, and we had celebrity speakers. And then we would end the day with a concert and fireworks actually on Pennsylvania Avenue. And I thought that was great. I would always say, hey, man, the brothers got fireworks on Pennsylvania Avenue. Look at that. And so it went on. And then, when you have changes in leadership, and then I was no longer there on the council, they kind of scaled it back. And now the parade is, at this point, is limited from, I think they started 13th Street and they end at Freedom Plaza, which is 2 blocks. And I don't see the workshops and things of that nature. But if you were to look back in the period when we were in charge of it, and we ran everything out of my office with our staff, and it became huge. And our vision was that we'd have Emancipation Day sales, we'd have the Macy's, all the stores, and the whole 9 yards, and eventually that would assist in getting statehood, because you build up a movement. And we're hoping at one point we'd get a national leader that would call for 1 million people to come to Washington, D.C. and really push statehood. Now, if you imagine if we had kept that going, and then Eleanor Holmes Norton, our fearless leader on the Hill, to her credit, and people don't really realize this, but just within the past 5 or 6 years, she was able to get the resolution for statehood passed in the House. She got it to the Senate, and 2 Democratic senators would not vote for it to get it over, to get it to fruition, to make it come. And that was the senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and the senator from Arizona, Sinema. And so I really give her credit for her not having a vote on the Hill, but having the opportunity to bring all those forces together and all those votes, and almost really pulled it off. And so I know that's a long, answer to your question, but things happen, and administration changes, and you have lobbyists on both sides of the equation, and they were able to get this government to scale down. And while other parades continue to grow and prosper.
Vincent, that was great. Vince and I go back a few years, but when I was with the Auto Dealers Association, he did such a wonderful job on the city council that we went over to the Paris Auto Show. Just had a wonderful time at the places like the Folies Brazier and things like that.
Well, and not only Paris, we did Berlin.
Oh, we did. We did
Frankfurt.
Berlin and Frankfurt. I mean, you know, we just did it all. But
And
I
we
mean,
accomplished our goal. We were able to get the auto show moved from, I think it was December. We wanted it in January.
that's right.
And the idea was to get Congress to come and be a part in January. And then
Right.
we built a niche because we would push safety, the
Yeah.
safety of the vehicles. Sorry, Jerry.
Yeah, Vince, you really are the guy that got us rolling, and you know, you were fantastic. And I mean, you know, the go-to man. You needed something done when you were on the DC Council. You were the one to call, and you were just great. And we just had a wonderful time together, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Let's go back to Paris.
Yes, I'm ready.
I'm a native DC person. I was born in DC, and you make me very proud.
All right. And Jerry was able to get Mayor Anthony Williams to loosen up. We never saw such a loose and happy guy. You know, a great time. And he tells great jokes.
Thank you, Mr. Orange. I actually am a part of the DC Chamber. In my first year, you were president. So great to virtually see you again.
Great. Thank you.
But of course, so a question I have is kind of sharing the same sentiment on, you know, what would you like to see, or what could we do as citizens to make sure that this day and the parade and everything grows and there's that kind of, you know, general knowledge behind it? Because I feel like everyone knows Juneteenth, but they don't know, you know, Emancipation Day. So what could we do to make that more wide known, especially in the district?
Well, this would be the opportune time to really get to the mayor and the council and get the foundation up and moving forward, because next year will represent the 20th anniversary of DC Emancipation Day being a public holiday. And it will also represent the 25th year of it being the private legal holiday, because we started in 2000, and then 2000 to 2005, it was a private legal holiday, which meant that anyone could use their leave to take the day off, no questions asked. And then 5 years later, it became a public holiday. And so we'll be celebrating those two occasions next year. So now would be the time. And you know, it takes time to get the federal government on board to where they allow all the armed forces to come, but they came for 2 or 3 consecutive years. And even to the point for the 150th anniversary of DC Emancipation Day, we were able to start at the Lincoln Memorial, have a presentation there, and then march through to other monuments. And the federal government picked up the entire cost, because they told us, hey, as long as you're talking about first of the amendments and the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and in their budgets, they pick up that cost. And so there's a lot of things that you can do, especially when you have partners at the Park Service that are on board as well.
Thank you so much for coming. My name is David Klaus. I am from Iowa, but I've lived in DC over 50 years now, so I remember you well.
Thank you.
We had a young lady speaker a few years ago who's traced her maternal line to slaves in DC who worked, I've forgotten the name, but it's a historic building on M Street in Georgetown that's a private club. It took me some time to figure out why she hadn't talked about the paternal ancestors, and I think that's a shameful legacy of slavery she didn't know. Anyway, I also wanted to say you could have very well have been a Methodist preacher. And finally, my question, would you consider becoming a member of our club?
Sure. Sure.
Would you consider that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got the Donnie Shaw show coming, right? Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Stay right there. So thank you so much. Like I said, Mr. Orange is my mentor. I've known him. We met actually when he was running for mayor one year. And then a couple of years later, we met at a boxing benefit. And we've been friends ever since. And he's been mentoring me. I've done everything from been his secretary at the DC Chamber of Commerce, to sitting on the boards, to chairing your campaign and working it. And just thank you so much for all that you've taught me in this city. And one day you will see my name on that ballot. Mr. Orange, Your Honor, we have a tradition here at our club where we plant a tree in honor of all who speak before us. And so we're going to do the same for you. And this certificate is, yes, we're going to take a picture. So this is a certificate, and on here you'll find the coordinates where you'll be able to locate your tree that we planted down on the tidal basin, so you can actually find your coordinates. But we're going to plant a tree in your honor. Thank you so much for your presentation, and let's get this picture.